The reputation of Star Wars games has had huge ups and downs. There have been known gems that garner a great reputation beyond Star Wars fans, and some games that even Star Wars fans don't know about and didn't play. Sometimes it's tough for games to live up to a reputation, particularly games that have gained a reputation as being some of the best, but are 20 or more years old. How many of those games, even remastered, can truly stand the test of time? Welcome to Holocron Hoard, a channel with a simple mission: to play every Star Wars game ever made and find the best one. Today, we're going to look at one of the most beloved Star Wars games of all time, the third game in Kyle Katarn's video game series Jedi Knight, Jedi Outcast. We're going to talk about the history of the game, the gameplay, the story, whether it's Legends or canon, what parts of it could be canon, and most importantly, is it good? Is it fun? If you think that's a cool concept for a channel or end up enjoying the video, like, subscribe, leave a comment. You can write whatever you want down there. You can write papaya for all I care. All those types of engagement really help new channels like this one grow on YouTube. Enough plugging, let's go reconnect to the Force. Jedi Knight, Jedi Outcast is a third, sometimes first-person action/shooter hybrid developed by Raven Software, a developer more recently famous for working on Call of Duty franchise entries. Jedi Outcast was originally launched in 2002 for Windows, Mac OS, Xbox, and GameCube, with a re-release for Nintendo Switch and PS4 in 2019. You can also play the Xbox version via backwards compatibility on modern Xbox consoles, so really you can play this game anywhere today, right now. But that does come with one big caveat, and it's the one I'm going to address right now because it's very relevant to the review. In addition to the single-player components of Jedi Outcast, it has a pretty robust and very beloved multiplayer mode. On PC, that multiplayer has a thriving community still, with custom maps, rebalancing, communities dedicated for specific servers, and more. It all has a very 2000 to 2015 multiplayer gameplay feel that's really cool and really nostalgic for me personally. That experience is not available on all of the platforms that you can play this game. You're only going to get that realistically if you're playing on PC. I struggled a lot with this video because of this, because the multiplayer is beloved and it still has such a dedicated base to this day, but for a whole segment of people looking to play this game, it just won't be relevant. So I've made the decision that for both Jedi Outcast and its sequel, Jedi Academy, I will not be factoring multiplayer into these videos. I still want to talk about it. There's going to be a whole separate video for both, but I want this ranking to be relevant to as many people as possible, so we're sticking to talking about this single player. Okay, diversion handled. Jedi Outcast, which is built in the Quake 3 engine, represents a shift relative to its Dark Forces predecessors, in that it's primarily focused on being a third-person lightsaber combat game. While first-person shooting aspects do still exist, particularly in the first few levels when our game's lead Kyle Katarn is still disconnected from the Force, you are, by and large, dueling with your lightsaber, reflecting back blaster bolts, swapping between fast, medium, and strong lightsaber styles, and just generally doing a lot more melee combat. This is supported by a very deep lightsaber combat system. You have a deceptive amount of control over the directions of your lightsaber swings based on how your character is moving. Hold left, the lightsaber swings right to left. Hold right, now it swings left to right. You can hold back and right for a diagonal swing, forward and right for a different diagonal swing. All of these directions matter in the context of opponents, specifically Jedi ones, blocking. And you can chain them all together in a variety of combos. It's a combat system that's way deeper than anything from Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2. And if you come in like me, spam swinging, it can feel a little clunky. But something magical happens over the course of Jedi Outcast. You slowly start to get the rhythm a little bit. It happens the first time you combo two swings together in a cool way. Then you get a cool fast kill on an enemy lightsaber wielder. Suddenly things start to click, and the result is one of the most satisfying melee combat experiences I've had in any video game, retro or modern. It's really impressive. It's a combat system augmented by a robust group of force powers, and unlike the previous entry in the series, said force powers are implemented linearly. Gone is the spend points and only have some powers system from Dark Forces 2, instead opting to gift you out powers piecemeal, including tutorializing your introductory powers. And look, I understand that its predecessor is a product of its time, no tea, no shade to that, but this is a great example of how games evolved in really positive ways over time. The onboarding experience here is much smoother and leads to a overall much better experience. And if you're me, it unlocks a secret new hard mode experience. You see, viewer, something I alluded to in my previous videos was that I felt like Dark Forces and Mysteries of the Sith opened up the opportunity to spend force points poorly. What I didn't tell you is that the thing I never ever took was Force Heal, thinking to myself that the game has health packs, why heal? Flash forward to me playing Jedi Outcast, working my way through, generally enjoying the game, but being in Discord with my friends and idly complaining, it's weird to me that they made the decision to always carry over your health status from mission to mission. It's making it really hard a lot of the time. I wish sometimes it would heal me. As I'd spent most of the game reloading quick saves, shout out to quick saves, our love for quick saves continues, and one of my friends, who happens to have played a bunch of Jedi Outcast, casually throws out, "Can't you just force heal?" Folks, let me tell you, this is a different game when you can force heal. Force heal makes this game crazy. It's a wonder that the Jedi Order ever fell when you can just bust around a corner and chug your way to success. Game-changing power. And I'm spending a lot of time talking about force heal, but in reality, all the force powers in this game are satisfying to use. They all feel so much better than Dark Forces 2, and it just gives the game a very, very strong Jedi experience overall. However, that doesn't come without its own faults. Due to story reasons I'll get to in a minute, you spend the first section of this game with no force powers or lightsaber. The first portions of this game are consequently pretty hard. It doesn't feel like they're balanced independently of the rest of the levels, so if you pick something like this game's equivalent of heroic difficulty, you're going to find yourself sweating it out trying to complete those levels. And in keeping with the tradition of these games, you can't change difficulty level to level without console commands. You're locked in on your file. So I ended up just playing on normal, and I had fun. I'm not the gamer I once was, I guess. The level design is well executed. It has good set pieces. The locations you travel to over the course of the game are pretty varied. The balance of puzzles and fighting and traveling feels good. I really don't have a ton of negative things to say about the gameplay experience. I guess one thing is that some force powers just feel really, really strong. Force speed is incredible. You should basically just always use force speed when fighting any kind of Dark Jedi. And the final boss, I don't think I really understand how I killed him. I went in for like 4 or 5 attempts and he suddenly just fell over. I don't want to get ahead of myself though. Let's pivot a little and talk about this game's story. Jedi Outcast takes place 8 years after the Battle of Andor, or 12 ABY, which is shorthand for after the Battle of Yavin, or functionally after Star Wars A New Hope. It's about 2 to 3 years after the preceding game, Mysteries of the Sith, link on screen now for a review of that game, a game where our protagonist, Kyle Katarn, falls to the dark side of the Force. Evidently, in the aftermath of this, Katarn cuts himself off from the Force entirely, and goes back to his traditional mercenary ways alongside his handler-turned-lover, Jan Ors. The game cold opens on a cutscene that has Mon Mothma ordering Kyle and Jan to hit up a planet called Khajiim to look into some Imperial Remnant comms that mentioned the Valley of the Jedi. It turns out, what the Remnant has been looking into is crystals that act as Force storage units, holding some of the Force's power within them. They shuttle off to the mining facility responsible for harvesting these crystals, make their way through the base, free a bunch of prisoners getting experimented on, and then look to leave. But the party is crashed by a former student of Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy, Desan. Desan is a T-Rex, my mistake, who has become a Dark Jedi and is now working with the Imperial Remnant alongside his own apprentice, Tavion. Kyle, in his cut off from the Force state, by the way, Jedi, stop cutting yourself off from the Force. It always ends bad. He can't really do anything against Desan and Tavion. So Desan bats Katarn around before hitting up his comlink and ordering Tavion to kill Jan Ors, who she was holding on board. Lightsaber on, lightsaber off, dead Jan, mad Kyle. In his rage, Katarn returns to the Valley of the Jedi to jumpstart his Force battery again, which works, and then jets off to get his lightsaber back from Luke. Unfortunately for Kyle, Desan and Tavion wanted that the whole time. They track him to the Valley of the Jedi to get its location, and using the Valley's power, they're able to create an army of Dark Jedi known as the Reborn, individuals artificially given the ability to use the Force. Kyle arrives on Yavin 4, the location of Luke's main Jedi Academy in Legends continuity, more on that in a minute, and after solving a series of jump puzzles and riddles, evidently Luke learned a lot from his time with Yoda, is given his lightsaber back. It's here that Kyle learns about Desan's past at the Academy, and also where Luke tells him, "Hey man, kind of a dumb move to go to the Valley of the Jedi immediately after seeing those two." Luke then gives him info on a crime lord that might know how to find Desan, kicking off Katarn's galaxy-hopping quest to track down the dinosaur story that killed his love. There's actually some cool little world-building moments here. The Chiss bartender on your first destination, Nar Shaddaa, tickled me in a fun way. I love Nar Shaddaa. I love whenever I get to go there in a game. Just a great location. You end up helping Lando Calrissian get out of there and travel to Bespin, working your way through your first encounter with the reborn Dark Jedi and culminating in a fight with Tavion. Handily taking her out, she reveals that Jan isn't dead. It was all a ploy to trick Kyle into taking them to the Valley of the Jedi. You don't end up killing her, but you do end up engaging in the Jedi Knight / Dark Forces classic, stowing away in a cargo vessel to get taken to an Imperial base. At this base, you see your old pal Luke again, do a quick team up, share some intel that they've been giving the Reborn armor made out of cortosis, a material that resists lightsabers in Legends and outright shorts them out in canon, and then split. Katarn sneaks aboard Desan's ship, the Doomgiver, and gets to watch Luke and Desan duke it out before the reptile, story, runs and gets on his ship. You then sabotage the shields of the Doomgiver so that Rogue Squadron can take it out, rescue Jan. You then take down Desan's Imperial partner, who lets you know that the plan was to destroy Luke's Jedi Temple, and jettison out an escape pod with one final task: stop the invasion of Yavin 4. Kyle makes his way across Yavin 4, taking out both Imperial Remnant and Reborn along the way, follows Desan all the way down into the ruins underneath the Jedi Academy, and fights Desan one last time. All the Imperials surrender. Kyle decides this time he's going to keep his lightsaber, and then runs off for a beach vacation. That's not a joke, that's what he does with Jan. Overall, this is the take that I'm worried is going to generate the most heat for me on the internet. The story is fine. It's a perfectly serviceable story. It has enough conflict to justify Kyle's actions and motivations. It's presented well, and it fits with the overall Legends universe and EU of the time. But it's very much an old EU story. As I've talked about before, and we'll get to talk about in a second, Legends has some really good stuff. It has some of the best Star Wars around, but a lot of it was just good or fine, and a lot of it was bad. This story pretty firmly falls into the fine territory for me. In the context of this game, Desan is just like not a very compelling villain. I don't even hate the design of him. I actually kind of like it. And the setup for Tavion is important to the next game, Jedi Academy. But in general, there just isn't anything to write home about with this plot. I don't want to get on a soapbox, but Jedi stories in Star Wars in general often have a problem where they feel like they need to introduce antagonistic lightsaber wielders to create compelling challenges for the Jedi. A problem that is exacerbated by video games and that was particularly prevalent in older video games. And so the consequent development of a narrative conceit for having those is fine, but it's not actually interesting. I did like the Jan fake out death though. Fake killing someone's partner to bait them into taking you somewhere is a classic trope. I had fun with the story the entire way through. It's not bad, it's just not particularly great either. Classic Legends. Speaking of which, let's get into the most fun part of this video. Can we pretend any of this is canon? If you're not familiar with how Star Wars fiction works, I'm not going to do a big explainer here, although I have linked a short on screen if you want the quick and dirty. But functionally, Star Wars is split into two distinct categories. Legends, which is anything that didn't come from George Lucas himself and happened pre-Disney acquiring Lucasfilm, and canon, which is anything after 2014 and said acquisition. We don't talk about one being better or worse than the other on this channel because I think it's a really tired argument. Both Legends and canon have some great stuff and some absolute trash bin fiction, and a lot of stuff that falls somewhere in the middle. And anyone who tells you any different is lying to you. I love all the good, I love some of the crappy Legends stuff, I love some of the bad canon stuff, and I really dislike parts from across both as well. There's no shade here. One exercise that we do like to do on this channel, once we've established that something is Legends, is figure out what it would take to make it canon, or what parts of it could be canon. Jedi Knight, Jedi Outcast is most definitely Legends. It predates the canon Legends split by 12 years, and is pretty firmly rooted in the established architecture of the old EU. For previous games in the series, Dark Forces 2, and Mysteries of the Sith, we had varying degrees to which we could stretch our belief to think that those events still happened in canon. Each time I've reviewed one of those games, I've touched on that while it was getting harder to justify, you could still do it, but that we'd hit a point in the series where it would become functionally impossible to do so. That point occurs with Jedi Outcast, and the entire reason is Luke Skywalker's Yavin 4 School for Gifted Youngsters. You know what? I'll blitz some other stuff out of the way first. As I've discussed before, while you'd think the plot beats from the previous games, Valley of the Jedi, Jarek and the Leftover Inquisitorius, etc., would have made it onto Luke's radar if it was canon, you could still kind of believe all this stuff was happening in the galaxy and Kyle was running around with a lightsaber. Random Force users, quasi-Jedi with less formal training and lightsabers, and even what canon is now calling Boken Jedi, happened all the time in Legends and exist in canon, and the galaxy in Star Wars is massive. The Galactic Republic represented like 1.3 million planets or something of over 3 million total in the galaxy. Super easy to shift locations a bit and imagine that this happens out of sight of others. Even plot contrivances like the Reborn, while far-fetched and a little silly, aren't super hard to justify in your head. The Imperial Remnant is an established problem in canon, albeit in 9 ABY, but given the presence of the First Order later on, it's easy to imagine that there are tons of pockets of Imperial Remnant causing issues beyond that time frame and well into the 12 ABY time period. Again, as a reminder, ABY is after Battle of Yavin or after Star Wars A New Hope. Shout out to viewer Jacob for pointing out that some people watching might not know that. That's how we measure time in Star Wars. But the timeline is also sort of what creates the problem that shatters our ability to headcanon this, and I'm going to do my best to keep my reasoning brief. In canon, after the Battle of Andor in 4 ABY, Luke Skywalker spends 5 years going around the galaxy, gathering knowledge in hopes of restoring the Jedi Order. In 9 ABY, he starts building a Jedi Academy on the planet Ossus, where he takes Grogu as his first, albeit short-lived, student. Currently in canon, this is the only Jedi Academy Luke builds, and while we're still filling out a lot of the post-Return of the Jedi time period in lore, it's difficult difficult to believe one of those fill-out events could be also he started up a temple on Yavin 4. It also, in canon, takes Luke some time to spin up his Jedi Academy, although admittedly a lot of this is also currently blank space, so we don't actually know a lot about the intervening time between the start of the construction in 9 ABY and 15 ABY when Leia entrusts her son Ben to Luke for training. A lot could happen in that time period, enough that with some retcons you could maybe squeeze the story in, but we'll get to that in a second. In Legends, Luke's formation of the new Jedi Order happens around 11 ABY, and boy howdy, once it starts, do events start flying. This is largely due to the publishing directives and realities of how the EU worked at the time, but man, they cram a lot into a very short time period, because by the time 12 ABY and this game rolls around, it really seems like Luke's Jedi Academy is very established, doesn't it? But it's only a year old. Luke founds this academy in the Massassi Temple on Yavin 4, and that remains the home base of Jedi training for a long time, until the end of the war with the Yuuzhan Vaughn, which actually sees the destruction of said academy and Luke rebuilding a new academy on none other than Ossus. But that's a long time down the road relative to the time period we're at in canon. So unlike the games previous to this one, you can't really just stretch your belief to fit this game into the canon. Too much of the plot and events involve Yavin 4 to do that and don't line up timeline-wise. But, and this is where we still get to have fun, you could retcon a little bit of this game and probably make it not just work, but make it believable. Let's talk about how. I think literally all you have to do in this instance is make all of the temple activity take place on Ossus instead of Yavin 4. You might not even really need to shift the years. Imagine this situation with me for a minute. Luke is confronted with Grogu leaving his temple. He also knows that other people with Jedi training, older than children, other adults with Jedi training, exist out in the wilderness, thanks to Ahsoka directly, but also presuming that at some point he learns about Cal Kestis, if Kestis survives that long, and other Order 66 survivors. Luke's initial view is this: forget the age rule of the old Jedi Order. I'll take anyone I can get. He puts out the call, word starts to spread, and it attracts the attention of a canon Kyle Katarn, who runs off to see what Luke's situation is all about. It also begins to pull in other Force-sensitive teens and adults for training. Luke operates his temple like this for a number of years. It's sort of Jedi community college. They have their own share of adventures that could include events like this one. Situations where older pupils, like Desan, end up turning to the dark side and siding with the Imperial Remnant. Eventually, it gets to a point where Luke goes, man, this keeps happening. Or there's some other catalyzing event that makes Luke's Jedi Temple stance shift. His academy on Ossus becomes very strictly a place where he trains younglings and pupils before sending them off into the wider world. And he, along with the Jedi that he established during the time period before his catalyzing event, decides that he'll keep the existence of other Jedi hidden from those training at the temple until a certain point. This would allow you to slot in the events of Jedi Outcast, as well as a lot of other events and Jedi adjacent occurrences that I think are coming up with other canon Jedi in the time period between 9 ABY and 15 ABY, but also explains why you only see kids in the canon depictions of Luke's temple, and coincidentally still means that Luke's "I will not be the last Jedi" line works. That line still goes hard, by the way. I'm not saying that will happen because, to be blunt, it won't, but canon loves to pull events in from Legends with tweaking lately, and so if you look through that lens, I think this is the easiest way you could pull the events out of Jedi Outcast into canon with minimal changes. Basically just Control F Yavin 4, replace it with Ossus. There's other little nitpicky things like Rogue Squadron and other pieces that require massaging, but they're very minor in the grand scheme of it all, and using Outcast as inspiration for events to fill out the pre-Ben Solo Jedi Academy timeframe would be a really cool nod to fans. But that's the end of our fan speculation. Let's wrap this up. In a game series that has consistently iterated on each of its previous entries, Jedi Outcast continues to deliver. This game completes a shift in gameplay that Mysteries of the Sith started from being a primarily FPS with some melee to primarily melee, but sometimes you use a gun, and it does so with style. The lightsaber combat has a depth and satisfaction to it that is borderline unmatched to this day. We'll save that debate for when I get to the modern Jedi games. The Force powers feel good, it actually tutorializes in a smart way, and you feel a true sense of growth as you, alongside Kyle, get your footing back with the Force. There's almost nothing negative to say about the gameplay in this game, except for the difficulty of the first few levels being blindingly stark compared to everything afterwards, and not making it easy to toggle that for the end user if they feel they need to go up or down. The story itself, middling, but the best delivery of any of the games in this series so far, even if I still miss the FMV of Dark Forces 2. You aren't going to write home about any of the plot elements that happen here, but they keep you engaged, and Kyle's motivations for his actions actually make sense, which is a nice departure from Mysteries of the Sith, where he whiplashes off screen to being a bad guy because he got stuck in Pan's Labyrinth. The story was bolstered at the time of its release by fitting into the larger EU, and it being cool to see that stuff depicted in games. On its own, the ground it's built on is a little shakier, but nothing that fully destabilizes the game. Relative to everything else I've played on this channel so far, this game is firmly the best that I've played. It's the first game here that you can pick up even 23 years later and still have truly an excellent time playing. I could easily recommend this game to someone with no caveats other than slightly dated graphics, which to be honest are the least of my concerns with Star Wars games. Given some of the games I currently have planned to play next and the order, I suspect this game will sit at the top of this list for some time. A fact that feels weird to say, knowing that I've completed its sequel. But that's a video for another time. For now, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.